For centuries, skeptics dismissed the Bible as a book of legends. No proof, no names, no stones to back it up. Then archaeologists started digging, and the ground gave up something nobody expected, evidence not from believers, but from the Bible's own enemies. A Moabite king, a Roman prefect, an Assyrian emperor bragging about a war he didn't actually win, 7 objects, buried for thousands of years, each one surprising in its own way. Together they raise an interesting question. If the Bible's enemies left evidence for its kings and its wars, what happens when that evidence disagrees with the Bible itself? The story begins in northern Israel in 1993, at a site called Tel Dan, where archaeologists pulled a broken chunk of black basalt out of the dirt. It didn't look like much until someone read it. The inscription was Aramaic, the language of Israel's northern rivals, carved almost 3,000 years ago by a king boasting about a military victory. Buried in the damaged text was a phrase that stopped historians cold: House of David. This wasn't a Bible manuscript or a text written by David's own scribes. It was a rival king, on his own monument, casually naming a dynasty that was apparently still recognized generations later. Before 1993, many scholars argued David was pure legend, invented centuries after the fact like King Arthur. This stone didn't end that debate entirely. The text is broken and partly reconstructed, and a small minority of scholars still dispute the reading, but it shifted the consensus considerably. Most historians now accept that a real Davidic dynasty existed and was known outside Israel's borders. The fair claim isn't that archaeology proved David was a mighty emperor, it's that an enemy king treated the House of David as a real, established, rival power. South of Tel Dan, in modern Jordan, a second stone tells the story from the losing side. Found in 1868 at ancient Dibon, this nearly complete black stone bears 34 lines of text written for King Mesha of Moab, not to please Israel, but to boast that he'd broken free from it. The inscription describes Moab under the control of a powerful Israelite king named Omri, a name the Bible also records, and then describes Mesha's revolt and recapture of Moabite territory. It's essentially the enemy's version of a war the Bible describes in 2 Kings. The two accounts aren't identical. Each side naturally tells the story as its own triumph, but they clearly describe the same conflict, region, and era. There's an added wrinkle. Part of the stone is damaged exactly where some scholars believe a second reference to the House of David might once have appeared. New imaging technology has reopened that debate in recent years, with researchers disagreeing over whether the letters are legible enough to confirm it. What is certain is that an enemy king, writing in stone, confirms Israel existed, held real political power, and fought real wars, in the places the Bible says it did. The third piece of evidence isn't something anyone carved to brag, it's something people can still walk through today. Beneath the old city of Jerusalem runs a tunnel more than 500 meters long, cut directly through solid bedrock by ancient engineers working from 2 directions and somehow meeting in the middle. In 1880, a Hebrew inscription was discovered inside it, carved by the workers themselves, describing the exact moment the 2 digging teams heard each other's picks through the rock. The Bible describes King Hezekiah rerouting Jerusalem's water supply to protect the city from an approaching Assyrian army, moving water from a spring outside the walls to a pool safely inside them so that during a siege the enemy couldn't cut off the water supply. This tunnel is generally understood to be that very project. What's debated is the exact dating. Some archaeologists attribute the entire system to Hezekiah's reign right before the Assyrian crisis, while others argue certain sections may be older and simply expanded. The infrastructure itself isn't in question, only the precise timeline. Either way, it's a monumental, coordinated engineering project sitting exactly where the Bible places one, built for exactly the crisis the Bible describes. Hezekiah built his tunnel to survive an Assyrian invasion, and the Assyrians' own account of that invasion survives on a 6-sided clay prism now sitting in a museum in London. The Taylor Prism was written for Sennacherib, king of the Assyrian Empire, one of the most feared military powers of the ancient world. Carved in 691 BCE, it lists his military campaigns in his own words, including his invasion of Judah in 701 BCE. The prism names Hezekiah directly, describes the Assyrian army devastating Judah's countryside, and says Sennacherib trapped Hezekiah in Jerusalem like a bird in a cage. What's notable is what the Prism doesn't say. Assyrian kings did not write modest inscriptions. If Sennacherib had captured Jerusalem, the Prism would say so plainly. It doesn't. It describes the siege and the tribute collected, but never claims the city fell. The Bible tells the same story from the other side, Jerusalem under siege, terrified, and ultimately surviving. Two independent sources, one from the army that won nearly every other battle that campaign, agree on the detail that mattered most, even if the Bible's theological explanation for the survival is something archaeology can't test. Not every discovery on this list is monumental. The fifth object is small enough to fit on a fingertip, and it may be the oldest biblical text ever found. In 1979, archaeologists excavating an ancient tomb just outside Jerusalem discovered two tiny rolled-up strips of silver, barely larger than a cigarette. They were so fragile that unrolling them took years of careful conservation work. When researchers finally opened them, they found tiny Hebrew letters forming a passage still recited in synagogues and churches today. The priestly blessing, "The Lord bless you and keep you." These scrolls date to the final years before Jerusalem's destruction by Babylon, centuries before the Dead Sea Scrolls and almost everything else on this list, making this tiny piece of silver the oldest surviving physical fragment of text closely matching a passage from the Hebrew Bible. It doesn't prove the entire first 5 books of the Bible existed word for word at that time. What it proves is narrower but still striking. This specific blessing, in this specific language, was already circulating in everyday religious life in ancient Judah long before Babylon burned the city down. 600 years later, a very different discovery put a New Testament name in stone for the first time. In 1961, at the ruins of the Roman city of Caesarea Maritima, archaeologists found a limestone block reused in a later staircase, bearing a partly damaged Latin inscription. Within that damaged text, one name survived clearly: Pontius Pilatus. Until that discovery, Pilate, the Roman prefect who presided over Jesus' trial in the Gospels, existed only in religious texts and a handful of passing references by ancient historians, and some skeptics had questioned whether he ever held the title the Gospels assigned him. This stone settled the matter. It identifies Pilate by name, holding the exact Roman administrative title the New Testament gives him, Prefect of Judea, carved during his own lifetime by Rome's own officials, with nothing to do with Christianity. It doesn't verify any miracle, but it does confirm that the man at the center of one of history's most consequential trials was a real, documented Roman administrator, exactly where and when the New Testament places him. The seventh and final discovery isn't a single object but an entire library hidden in caves. Starting in 1947, near the Dead Sea, shepherds and then archaeologists began uncovering ancient scrolls, eventually amounting to fragments from hundreds of manuscripts, some over 2,000 years old. Among them was the oldest known complete copy of the biblical book of Isaiah, along with fragments of nearly every book of the Hebrew Bible. Before this find, the oldest complete Hebrew Bible manuscripts available were medieval, copied 1,000 years after the fact. Suddenly historians had texts 1,000 years older than anything previously known. The scrolls showed that these biblical texts were being copied, preserved, and treated as sacred centuries before Christianity began, and that in many places the wording lines up closely with Bibles read today. But the scrolls also revealed something more complicated. Not every copy matches perfectly, and some manuscripts show real variation between scribes and regions. That isn't a weakness in the discovery. It's the discovery being honest about how ancient texts were actually transmitted, by hand, by real people, across centuries. Recent research combining radiocarbon dating with handwriting analysis technology has even suggested some scrolls may be older than previously believed, a debate still actively unfolding today. 7 objects, 7 different digs, 7 different centuries, 7 different rival civilizations, and each one puts a piece of the biblical world back on the map. So what happens when the evidence disagrees with the Bible in small ways, as it sometimes does? The honest answer is that this is exactly why historians trust the evidence more, not less. A Moabite king telling his own version of a war he lost to Israel isn't propaganda for the Bible. It's an independent voice, with its own agenda, that happens to confirm the same world, the same names, the same conflicts. None of these 7 objects prove a miracle happened. Archaeology was never built to do that. What they prove is something archaeology can actually do, that the kings were real, the cities were real, the wars were real, the water systems were real, and the words were preserved with remarkable, verifiable care. The Bible's world wasn't invented. It left fingerprints, in stone, in silver, in clay, and in caves, and researchers are still finding more of them.